Why are we struggling to get a gold medal? GDP, Malaysia is the highest.
Okay.
Health expenditure, Malaysia is the highest. If anyone had won a gold medal at the recently concluded games,
Right.
they would have been in the running for 6 million. Our athletes are simply not incentivized because the allowance of an athlete is only 800 ringgit.
I'm Aaron.
And I'm Hardish. And this is the Economy Rise podcast.
It's where we focus on things related to the economy and things that are related to your rice bowl.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about the Olympics.
Right.
It might sound like, why are we talking about Olympics? But I think what we hope to do is to show that everything in this world can be explained through economics.
Right.
Right? But, before we start, have you been roughly keeping in touch with the Olympics?
Well, I read about it on Substack because that's my platform.
Yeah.
But I honestly didn't really follow it.
Yeah, I think so. The summary, if you to sort of summarize the mood, I think Malaysians were pretty upset, right? I would say we had a shot at goal, especially we were close with badminton. I guess we didn't get to know how close we were with cycling because there was sort of on one case there was an accident, in another case there was a disqualification. So
Was there actually a very good chance that he could
I think
have gotten
for
gold?
cycling, yes,
Yes,
right.
yes,
Azizul, right? So this would have been his, if I'm not mistaken, fourth Olympics.
Right.
But if you look at it, the two editions back, he won bronze, and then the last edition he won silver. So if you just plan that trajectory,
I heard
you
there
go
was
for gold,
something that the French guy was trying to...
Yeah, I
provoke him
think
off.
that's what a lot of people are sort of French, and then in the second case was the Japanese. But sports is sports, lah, right?
Right.
Everything happens on the playing field, and I guess it's best to leave it on the playing field, right? But as I mentioned, there's always an economic case for everything in this world, and I don't think anyone has sort of considered it from an economic point of view, right? But the setting here is that so I looked up some numbers, and let's just look at a slightly bigger lens, right? So Southeast Asia, apparently we equaled the best gold medal haul at the current Olympics. So 5 golds. Right. So that was the same as during the Rio Olympics as well. It was also 5 golds.
Okay.
But at the current Paris Olympics, it was 16 medals in total. Right?
Okay.
So 16 medals. So now put this in context, right? This is a region with 670 million people.
Right.
And you always hear the economic case that this is a powerhouse, right? Waiting to happen. 670 million strong, huge consumer base and stuff like that, right? So that is the economic argument always.
Yes.
Now the question here is that why is it that this huge population base of 670 million have only been able to deliver 16 medals?
Yes. So maybe you want to tell us what the subject matter of today's
But
episode is?
it seems a bit odd, right? If you look at it from that point of view, it's like quite a huge disparity between the population and the medal tally.
Right.
So that's the thing. Is there a way to explain this from an economic point of view? And apparently there is, or there might be, right? I looked up 2 studies. So the starting point is like, is there a correlation between, you look at a country's economic growth and, is there a case to be made in terms of how it correlates to, your sports performance, right? And here, the benchmark here will be economic gains, because that is basically the gold standard, right?
Right.
Especially winning a gold medal at the Olympic Games.
Right.
So I found 2 studies. So the first one was by this Sports Management Review. This was back in 2012. And I'm just going to summarize. We'll put links in the show notes if anybody wants to read the report. But the best determinants to Olympic success are the growth rate, the economic growth rate, unemployment, health expenditure, ex-host, meaning that if you've hosted the games before, and you can kind of understand where that comes from, because if you hosted the games before, you would have had to spend on infrastructure, right? So that probably also leads to economic, sort of sports success as well, training, development, and the population size. Right?
Okay, maybe you can break it down for the audience. Like, what are exactly the determinants?
Yeah, so growth rate, unemployment.
Oh,
so
GDP growth.
GDP growth, right? GDP
So
growth, unemployment is,
Right.
Your health expenditure, how much the country spends on health, right?
As a percent of GDP.
As a percent of GDP,
Right.
whether you are ex-host, and your population size. And the argument here would be the more people you have, the bigger sample size you have to create champions. Right?
Right.
You would, which, makes sense. You would think a country like America has far more opportunities than a country like Singapore.
Okay.
Just because of the sheer size.
So basically,
number.
what these are is the formula behind how many gold medals a country might
You
get.
could say, yeah, I guess so. I mean,
Yeah,
if you wanted to look at it that way, right, you could, as a policymaker, you could, if you agree with the outcome of this study, right, you could look at it and say, like, okay, these are the ingredients.
Okay.
Let's tackle all of this, right?
Right.
Let's also look at, there was a second study. This was put out by Georgia Institute of Technology. This was in 2014. They found that the country size and the healthcare expenditure per capita were significant.
So
right?
basically, out of the previous, how many? 5?
Yeah.
it's actually these two that matter most.
In this particular paper. I mean, different studies look at, they might set it up differently, right?
Right,
so
right,
these
right.
are two separate papers.
So it's country size, basically
Yeah.
a population size.
Yes.
So that you have a bigger sample size to pull from.
Pool of talent, right?
Right.
And,
healthcare
And
expenditure per
healthcare
capita.
expenditure. Yeah.
Can you explain a bit? I mean, do you happen to know why healthcare expenditure per capita actually
Yeah,
matters?
so we'll go into that.
Okay.
But the way to go into that is, if you look at these two studies, the thing that is common across both is actually healthcare expenditure.
Okay.
So the first study cited 5 items, the second one cited 2 items, but the one that's really interesting here is healthcare expenditure.
Right.
Country size, I mean, what can you really do about it? You can't solve country size, right?
Right.
I mean, Singapore can't decide that, okay, we're just going to be bigger overnight to solve
Does
this.
Singapore have a lot of gold medals?
So interesting question. So now ASEAN has got 10 countries, right? But
Yeah.
when ASEAN was first founded in 1960s, there were 5 countries.
Okay.
Guess which country until now has not won a gold medal? Malaysia. Of
Malaysia.
course,
Yeah, okay.
And
I was guessing it's Malaysia.
Yeah, and that's a bit, I don't know how to feel about that. It's a bit, so even Singapore has won a gold medal.
Right.
Singapore has won a gold medal, Indonesia has, Thailand has, Philippines has. Right. Only Malaysia is the only remaining member.
We
of
nearly
the
got
original-
one with Chongwei, right? Like
Yeah,
few years back.
so we nearly got one, but it's not. But
Yeah,
we
yeah.
didn't, right?
Yeah,
the
okay,
fact stands for itself. We didn't. And so Malaysia's search for its first gold medal continues.
Right.
But coming back to what we're talking about right now with that setting, if you look at a lot of these metrics from an economic point of view, let's take out Singapore, okay? Because Singapore is an outlier in that sense. If you look at their GDP and all that, they are so much further ahead than the rest of the member countries in ASEAN.
Right.
So I think we can make an argument to just ignore them for this particular case, right?
Right.
But you look at all the other countries, GDP Malaysia is the highest.
Okay.
Health expenditure Malaysia is the highest.
Right.
Right?
This is per capita,
This is per
or
capita.
percent of GDP.
Yeah, per capita, right? So now you think about it, like, what is it that's not happening, right? Why are we struggling to get a gold medal?
Okay, is this a rhetorical question or is this a actual question?
No, it's an actual question.
Okay.
Right? I mean, this is obviously we are trying to aim to win a gold medal, right? I mean, all of us want to see a Malaysian athlete come back with a gold medal, and I think we were all quite upset at what happened during Paris. On the one hand, in badminton we got close, 2 bronzes, and then in cycling, I guess we never got to really find out whether we were really in contention or not. Right? I mean, we were in contention, but I guess the chapter was closed a bit too soon, in terms of, they didn't get to go to the finish line.
Right.
So it's a big question, and everyone always talks about it from the athlete point of view. But sports is infrastructure as well, right? It is, you have to spend on infrastructure, you have to invest in athletes. So it is actually an economic argument to be made, right? So when you look at it from that point of view, why is it that all other ASEAN countries, so even Vietnam has won a gold medal, right, from the current ASEAN base, right? So that leaves Malaysia, Brunei, Laos, Cambodia.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. It's a bit sad that we don't have a gold medal. And what explains it? So
just to clarify, Thailand does have one.
Yeah, Thailand has a gold medal.
What sport do they have it in?
I can't remember.
Singapore, so I'm quite curious.
Singapore won for, if I'm not mistaken, swimming.
Swimming, right? Yeah. That was like last time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So now let's go into the details a little bit further, right? So on the one hand, we made the case for health expenditure, right? As I mentioned, we remove Singapore. Malaysia is the highest health expenditure. We spend on per capita basis USD 487. Right? Thailand is USD 364. So that's a difference of 100 USD per capita.
Right.
Okay. This is a significant difference, in health expenditure.
Right.
Okay. So something doesn't add up there.
So actually, so this is between Singapore and Thailand, is it?
No, Malaysia and Thailand.
Malaysia and Thailand.
Yeah, so let's remove Singapore, right? Because I mean,
it's an outlier.
There's no way to compare
actually,
with Singapore.
this area cursorily, right? I may be able to add context.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Thailand is actually very well known across the world for being a developing nation with sterling healthcare budgets.
Really? Okay.
Yes.
But even so, they are, according to this data, they spend lower than us.
Oh, they spend lower than us.
Yeah. Malaysia is USD 487.
Okay, I think what they are good
Thailand
at,
is 364.
if I'm not wrong, there's a very recent The Economist article. They have very high insurance coverage. That might explain. Because typically, single-payer healthcare systems,
Right.
they have the bargaining power to drive costs down.
Right.
I think Malaysia is kind of the opposite. Okay, maybe not the opposite, but we have a single Pamanyaga, right?
Right.
So there is an argument to be made for both having national champions with economies of scale that drives costs down, and also single payer healthcare systems where you have the bargaining power over the suppliers.
Right.
I'm not really sure about the details.
But in any case, yeah, so we spend a lot on healthcare. The argument here is that if you spend on healthcare, I mean, you're talking about sports people, right? So where you're prone to injury, so you need a lot of recovery.
Okay, but just to ask a really question, I would imagine the sports side would be more of a segment, right, of the whole healthcare system.
Yeah.
So if you think about what healthcare is really spent on, it's really critical illness. That is really where the bulk of it, even in the US, is the same. So would there really be an actual good proxy for sports performance?
I think the argument here, so I'm sort of trying to make sense of it off the top of my head, okay. But where do athletes come from? They come from schools, right?
Okay.
Athletes, you breed athletes at a very young age.
Okay.
Right? That's the reality.
You groom
right?
athletes.
You groom athletes at a very young age. So if your healthcare is not good, then obviously you don't have a healthy population that will then be able to sort of develop, right?
Yes.
And actually on that note, okay, so now that you bring it up, this doesn't count under healthcare, but we do have a crisis of stunting in Malaysia.
Okay.
Right? Okay, but this is a longer term play. That argument is, like if kids today are stunted, then, there probably will be an effect in terms of when they grow up to be adults, right?
But I could be wrong, but I think the World Bank report did say that we are average at least, right? If I'm not wrong.
I believe we are worse than we should be in comparison.
I mean, definitely,
on the stunting.
but are we at least on par with peers?
I'm not sure this is something we want to be on. I mean, it's like, why would that be?
It's true.
Right?
It's true.
If your children are malnourished, it's.
I think the idea might be just that maybe the economy as a whole might not support that.
Yeah. So, but I think that's where the argument is, right?
Yes,
so your general health expenditure is reflective of the health of your populace, which then has outcomes on performance, right? Should they go into sports, right? You groom them to be athletes.
Right.
So that's the first thing. So that one, there's a question mark here. We are not summarizing. I mean, these are just questions, right? If you just put 2 and 2 together, if health expenditure is a determinant in Malaysia, we are spending higher than the rest of our neighbors.
Right.
But we don't have a goal yet.
Okay.
Then let's look at the second one. So sports expenditure. So of course, you can imagine that if you wanted to, again, groom athletes, you would need all the necessary expenditure, right? Whether it's infrastructure like the stadiums, or even expenditure in terms of the coaching talent.
Sorry, is this per capita or?
Yes.
Okay.
No, so this is not per capita. This one is in total.
Right.
So let's just go to the numbers. So last year's budget, right, 2023 budget. I think from what I was able to gather, the Youth and Sports Ministry got 324 million. So out of the total budget was close to 400 billion. So that's 0.08% or 0.1%.
Right.
Now, if you look at EU, I pulled it out a number. The average is 0.8%. Right?
Okay, to be fair, I don't think EU is a great benchmark against Malaysia.
No, but that's the thing, right? They do well at Olympics, right? I mean,
I get it.
as a region, right? So and they are sports. So I think sports is parked under sports, lifestyle, culture, and stuff like that. So you look at the total budget, right? And the EU average is 0.8%, right? Just in terms of comparison, lah.
Do you happen to know what is the major breakdowns of such sports expenditure? So we know it's infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
And infrastructure tends to involve stadiums, stuff like that, right?
Facilities,
But
training.
is that the bulk of it, or are other things also the other pertinent segments?
Not sure. Something worth looking in. These are sort of...
Because I imagine it would actually be more beneficial to spend on coaches than stadiums, right?
Well, you need facilities. So take, for example, say cycling, right?
Right.
Like, you need to build a velodrome. And, I mean, that is a huge infrastructure. Right, so you can have the best coaches, but you don't have the facility. Right. You're not just cycling on the highways. You need a velodrome, right? Yes. So the same like say swimming, right? You need swimming pools, like proper Olympic infrastructure swimming pools.
But then the question becomes: does having more swimming pools make you a better athlete, or make the country produce more better athletes? Right? It's like you can't accelerate how fast you bring a bun, something like that.
Yeah. But I would argue that you probably need a few good ones, but then you need the infrastructure to find the talent, house the talent, right? You need to be able to put them into almost like a dedicated program, right? So that they have access to the facilities, right? Because these facilities, you're not going to build it in every single state, right? It doesn't make sense as well. So then you need to have, and I think that's actually the thinking behind the sports school. So we actually have a sports school, right? So the idea is that you find talents, you bring them into the sports school, so they're all placed in one place, right? One area with all the facilities around it. Which actually is the return on investment of the Commonwealth Games in 1998, right? So this whole Bukit Jalil project, where you have all the stadiums, you have the hockey stadium, you have the swimming complex, all of that there. You also have the games villages. I think the sports school is also located in Bukit Jalil. So that is, I'm sure all of that probably is reflected in this Youth and Sports Ministry budget. Right. So anyway, just as a summary, we are spending, if you just wanted to make a comparison, you can make a case whether it's fair or not fair. But we are spending about 0.1% of the budget on sports. A country that's doing really well in sports, take EU for example, is 0.8%.
Do you happen to know what some other of our neighboring countries?
So I don't know neighboring countries, but I found another point, which was that as a percentage of GDP, like your expenses, sports expenditure as a proportion of GDP, roughly will be 0.5%.
Okay.
Right? So if you look at this, it is nowhere going to be near that lah. It's so this is not GDP, right? This is proportion of the budget. Like it's only 0.08% of the budget. Budget is a quarter of our GDP. Then we are nowhere near lah.
I think it would be interesting if you have time to explore what's the ROI on the sports budget expenditure.
Okay, we will come to ROI.
Okay.
So now we've covered healthcare and sort of sports expenditure.
Right.
Let's argue from a case of the sort of the athlete themselves in terms of incentives, right? So a lot of countries give out what is called like medal bonuses. So if you win a medal, you get a huge payout.
Okay, maybe give us some recent ones.
So we looked up. So in Malaysia, the prize in total is 6 million. So if anyone had won a gold medal at the recently concluded games, they would have been in the running for 6 million per individual, per person, right?
Do you happen to know what the silver and bronzes are now?
No, but definitely not 6 million.
Will it even be 1 million? Will
Maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe.
Because it sounds a bit like they shifted the silver ones to...
Yeah, so 6 million for prize, and there are a couple of rankings. So I found two rankings. So the rankings differs a bit, maybe in terms of how they measure. One ranks Malaysia as the 6th highest payout. Another one ranked it as 4th, but in summary, we are the top 10.
Right.
Okay. Now the question is, why do these incentives not work? And I'm going to make an argument here is that because, just to clarify, so this 6 million, right, is not all from the government. Partly is from the government. I think from the national sports body, if I'm not mistaken, it's about 1 million. And then typical Malaysian style, all the corporations come in and say, okay, we also will top up, we also will put in. And then so there are also like houses and like cars and stuff like that, all being pledged, right? So this is all, when you totally all up, it comes up to about 6 million. That's the estimate.
Actually, I'm very curious. In policy as a whole, you tend to involve the businesses, right? To fund national strategic. So this will qualify as a strategic, objective. Right? You win a gold medal is great for like better word marketing, right? Why doesn't this happen? It sounds like a very intuitive thing to, call your private sector in, right?
You mean why don't the private sector invest
in the way that they do for other, governmental policy?
So that's the point, right? Okay, so my argument here is that you are pledging towards a gold medal, right? And the question here is that the argument you can make a case is that we are incentivizing these people to do well, but that argument doesn't stand. Again, from an economic point of view. Why? Because the comparison here is, say, for example, scholarships. Right? You put kids in a classroom. They all have the same teacher. They all have the same syllabus. The best ones do well, and then they get a scholarship. In sports, it doesn't work like that. In sports, there are just too many variables. Right?
Yes.
Okay. There's the coaching. There's the infrastructure. There's the health. All these investments. Right? So you cannot say that the incentives are not working. Because basically here it actually is a gamble.
So basically, there's a luck element
Yeah,
involved.
it's a luck element involved.
Yeah.
And so for all these companies, so I will not name them, but the names are all published out there.
Okay.
The reason I don't want to name them is because I think if you really wanted to do this as a contribution to the country, I think you're doing it the wrong way.
Right,
And
right.
it should be called out because, the house always wins. The fact is that we are nowhere near winning a gold medal. Anyone
Okay.
can pledge, but you're never going to have to pay this out, right? We economic rights holders can say, okay, we pledge 20,000 for the next gold medal winner.
Right.
What is the chance of us having to pay this out? It's very, very low, right?
Right,
So
right.
the house always wins. So it's a publicity. You get the publicity, great. But here's how to think about it, right? From an economic point of view. We had about maybe a handful of athletes who were in real contention.
Right.
So you have the 6 million. If you spend 1 million each on them, additional, right, in actual spend for either their training and stuff like that, you probably have a higher outcome of actually seeing the result, right? This is not something that you should only provide at the end.
Okay.
So coming back to your question, why don't they actually spend more in the actual development, actual training,
Right.
investing in the athlete,
Right, right,
rather
right.
than just giving out this huge, bonuses where frankly only they benefit from the
Okay,
headlines.
correct me if I'm wrong, right? Wasn't there an opposite argument the last Olympics where they weren't, or maybe the 2 ones ago, the gold medal wasn't being paid enough?
But this would have been another country, or you mean what was on offer?
Meaning like maybe 1 or 2 rounds, or so 4 to 8 years ago,
Right,
right?
right.
I seem to recall there was something like that, some sort of complaint around that, right? Do
Probably-
you recall that?
Not really, but
Okay.
yeah, maybe. I mean, I guess so. There is a case that if you do win, I think you do deserve something, lah, right?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It's-
So it should be significant enough, right?
Right.
Because especially when you're talking about the very first gold medal.
Right.
Okay, but my point here is that this is not the way to do it, lah. I think the only people who benefit here are these companies, right?
Okay.
Who've already gotten their headlines, right, and have not had to pay a single cent for it. None of them are going to be paying out for this gold medal.
I guess
right?
you could think of it as this is the incentive to give them. Otherwise, they won't do it, right?
Okay. Anyway, so yeah, the house always wins, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so then my final point is infrastructure. So
Yes.
then you also need to have infrastructure, right?
Right.
Which is different from sports expenditure. So infrastructure is a huge thing. The only thing I'll say this is that very interesting arguments here that I think no one can really pin down, because one of the key arguments in the past was that the way to get better at sports, right, and sort of in terms of performance, is that you host the mega games. So when you host the mega games, the country will benefit from many different ways, but one of the ways is that you will have the infrastructure.
Right.
Right. So coming back to what I mentioned earlier about like Commonwealth Games, right? The reason we have the Bukit Jalil Stadium, the whole national sports complex, is because we had to spend on the infrastructure to host the Commonwealth Games in 1998.
Yes.
Right. So and those infrastructures still exist today. I mean, maybe someone can argue the upkeep and stuff like that, but infrastructure is there.
Isn't it quite commonly known that countries don't actually want to do Olympics because it's a white elephant situation?
Maybe that's an argument in terms of how well you manage the infrastructure once you've built it, lah.
Many countries have this complaint.
Yeah. Birmingham City, 2022, all Commonwealth Games.
Right.
Apparently, the city went bankrupt,
Yeah.
right? And then the recent one, the Australian state of Victoria pulled out of
Yes.
hosting the 2026
Yes.
Commonwealth Games.
And it seems
Right.
like they're having difficulties securing a candidate.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think somehow something has changed, because in the past, a lot of countries really wanted to host the games. They would.
So do you want me to go into the
Yeah,
economics
go
of it?
into it.
So basically, the fulcrum of the economic positiveness is marketing.
Yeah.
Right? You just get a lot of attention, then you can leverage on that. But some of it is that marketing asset is not lucrative enough to justify all the costs. Because there tends to be cost overruns, there tends to be delays, right? Think about how Tokyo had to delay a whole year due to the pandemic. Of course, that's an outlier. But if you actually pay attention, most Olympic city candidates tend to be big names.
Yeah.
Right? You don't really hear small names even volunteering anymore. So I think the only reason is because they're the only guys that the Olympic Committee can convince to take it on because they have the capacity to. I.e., the Olympic event is not net profitable.
Oh yeah, I agree. And it seems like the counter argument also, which is always the case, that then therefore you bring in tourists, right? And tourist dollars they spend and stuff like that. It seems like even that doesn't really hold up anymore. It might be that, I don't know, maybe games like Olympics don't have the same kind of stature anymore in this day and age. You can,
But why though? If you think about Beijing Olympics, right, that was a huge thing, you know.
but this
That
was
just
this, it was
12
'98, right? No,
I mean, the
2000.
Olympics has been around for 2,000 years, right? Why does it just suddenly change in the past 10 years or 15 years?
Actually, I would say I don't know how true this may be, but my argument might be that it is getting easier to have the same level of excitement as an audience when you're sitting at home as opposed to going in person. Because of media has
Would tourist arrivals alone be an explanation for that? I feel like that's not enough, right?
but that's the only thing that you can get back in return, right? I mean, in terms of let's talk from an income point of view. Whatever you spend on hosting it, ultimately the only source of income in return is going to be tourism coming into your country to spend. I cannot foresee any other form. Everything
Broadcasting,
else,
advertising.
Yeah, okay. Well, broadcasting, but I'm sure the broadcasting goes to the broadcasting rights holders, right?
Yes,
Who probably
yes.
would have paid a certain amount of money.
I guess
but
it's
I'm guessing
true.
they would have to pay to the IOC rather than to the host country. Maybe there's some sort of revenue sharing.
So
right?
the implication here is that there's a circular change in right, the economics of Olympics due to the distribution.
Distribution and consumption, right? Media consumption, maybe.
But then why wouldn't that be true for F1?
I don't know. Why wouldn't it be true for FIFA, which I think FIFA is still a huge sporting event that people would be willing to travel to? I don't know. Maybe it's a branding issue. I don't know. Games like this
worth
seems
thinking
to be,
about.
games like this seem to be increasingly a negative ROI,
Right.
And so that pulls into question like what happens after this, lah.
Right.
Yeah, and just to cap that, right? So even when we talk about how Australia pulled out of hosting the 2026 edition, right, and Malaysia was asked to step in with a gift of £100 million, right?
Right.
Which is $500 million.
Sorry, what was that for again?
To take on, because Australia decided not to host it, so they asked a few countries, Malaysia included, would you be willing to host it in 2026, I believe, and here's £100 million
For the trouble.
for the trouble.
Yeah.
This is $500 million ringgit, man. No, and and we still say no lah. We don't want.
That means it's too expensive.
Yeah, it's too expensive, right? So
I think this would be a really interesting topic to cover. Right? Like, what has gotten the cost to be so high?
okay, now all that is from an economic argument in terms of the infrastructure, expenses and stuff like that. We still have not answered why we are nowhere closer to winning. To be fair, we came close. Hopefully, we don't know how close we were, but the fact is we still don't have a gold medal. I mean, it's every time I say it, I feel like, man, how can Singapore have a gold medal and we don't have one? Even Thailand and Philippines.
I think the way to console yourself is to remember that there's a luck element involved. We just have bad luck.
Yeah. But I think there are some bright spots moving ahead just to cap off this episode. So a few things are being put in place. Now, this one, you got to take a longer term view. You're not going to see results straight away. So I think there's a political element here because I think people are impatient and stuff like that. But we don't cover that. So we are going to take the long-term view as economists, right?
Right.
Okay, so the long-term view is there's a few things I looked up. What is being done right now? So firstly, you had some questions for me in terms of these expenses and stuff like that. I couldn't answer it. But if you ask me maybe in 1 year's time, I will be able to answer it. Why? Because there is now going to be a spot satellite account, right? So a satellite account is within a sector. The Department of Statistics put out its own sort of a budget tracking expenses and stuff like that. So there is a satellite account for like ICT, for example, right? If you go to Department of Statistics website. So now there's going to be a spot satellite account. So I assume you will be able to see better, more granular details in terms of what are we spending on, what are the investments and stuff like that, right? Where is it going? Which is a good thing, right? So hopefully we'll get a lot more information. And according to the Youth and Sports Minister Hannah Yeoh, we are the first country in ASEAN to do the sports satellite account.
Okay.
So, 1 point there. Second one, I think very importantly, it turns out that we talked about incentives just now. Actually, the argument is that our athletes are simply not incentivized because the allowance of an athlete is only 800 ringgit.
Right.
I mean, that is like, okay, we've talked so much about minimum wage and stuff like that, right? Now look at an athlete. So I'm sure on the one hand, none of them are professional because there's no way you can just leave off this allowance. So I think that all of them holding down jobs.
Right.
And then also going for training and stuff like that.
Okay, wait, let me just double check. Is that true?
I would think so. So, for example, only a few of our badminton players have turned professional, right? Most of them are association players.
Okay, what about for other countries, like say US?
I think the argument is that they just pay them higher lah. right? So we only have allowances. So this
Right.
came out from a news story. So prior to this, allowance on general is 800 ringgit, right? So the current administration is now changing it so that they are contract employees, and they will get a salary of 1,500.
Right.
Okay, so it's double, or close to double, right? But this comes with EPF deductions as well. So your retirement savings and your SOCSO sort of coverage, right?
Right.
So it is significant, but in the bigger scheme of things, actually, it's still not significant. It's still 1.5K, right? It's not enough, as we know from even this work-life balance, where we got a lot of comments on that episode, right? These are athletes that we are hoping to fly our flag, and we are paying them 1,500.
This per month, right?
Yeah, per month. And before this, it was 800 ringgit.
Can I double click on that? Why is it that we don't pay them full-time wages? Is it because we don't have the budget?
I would say it's not a priority. I mean,
It sounds like something quite intuitive, right?
my honest opinion, I just don't think it's a priority. I don't think sports is a priority in this country.
Right.
I think we do it's part of the budget. There is a budget put out there. But the fact that prior to this, they were earning 800, I mean, so just, very quick recap. From what I was able to find out, the allowance was 2,000. It was cut by the previous administration at 800. So the fact that you are cutting it, right, tells you that it's not a priority.
Correct.
Okay?
Maybe it's just something that's less important in the grand scheme of things. Yeah.
It's not important at all.
Yeah.
That's the sad truth. But the third thing, so these were all by the current ministry, under Hannah Yeoh. The third one, just to cap off, is that there is now an increased tax relief, 103 sports. There's a list of 103 sports that are eligible for 1,000 tax relief.
Right.
1,000 ringgit tax relief. Okay, and this is the tax relief for if you go for coaching and training. And you want to know what the list of sports, among others, 103. So they are the typical ones, badminton, swimming, martial arts and stuff like that. But there's also billiards.
Billiards, okay.
Yeah, there's also bowls. Bowls is the one where they throw the...
Yeah. Okay.
I think I'm pronouncing it right way. Dodgeball.
Right.
Lion dance.
Okay, let's give some credit, There are people who actually want to do this.
No. But I mean, it's kind of funny, but actually,
Right.
I think it's great, right?
Yeah, okay.
I mean, be inclusive, so it's 103 sports.
Right.
If you take up training or coaching for any of these sports, including billiards, bowls, dodgeball, lion dance.
Okay.
Okay, let me also mention chess. I think it's great, right?
Right.
Young people can go for chess training.
Right.
And their parents can claim
Right.
back. I think it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But of course, as I mentioned, all the other usual candidates like swimming, badminton, and stuff like that. But these are longer terms, right? So this was introduced only in the last budget. So the first time that people will be able to claim for it is in this year, right?
Yes.
Aaron, I hope you start learning billiards, right?
Well, we can both go train, right? And claim our 1K tax relief.
So I actually am planning to pick up pickleball. It's also in the list.
Okay.
Right?
Do you know pickleball is having a resurgence in the US? Like a real bubble tea level of fame.
Okay. So hopefully it makes it into the Olympics.
Okay.
And one of us will win gold for Malaysia.
Okay.
All right. That's it. That's the episode.
Okay. So what's the conclusion? Can you just give us your thoughts on what is the correlation between the economic incentives as well as Olympic gold medal acquisition?
Let me put it this way. I think the strategy moving forward, right, is to have a slightly longer term horizon.
Okay.
And then you look at all the new types of sports that are coming up. Right? We cannot keep banking on badminton, all these traditional sports.
Right.
Okay, those investments are already there, and I think we will keep doing well. You just have to make sure that you invest in the right places.
Okay.
But I think what we also have to do is to create talents for all these new sports that are coming up. So like breakdancing, for example, right? Breakdancing was in the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm not saying breakdancing, but there are a lot of other sports that are sort of new modern sports that are coming into the Olympics. And the reason for that is because the competition obviously will be smaller to begin with, right? Because these are still...
Like pickleball, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, can we get someone who is currently in the top 200 on tennis in Malaysia
Right.
and then just put him or her through intensive pickleball, and then become pickleball world champion.
Right.
And I think the investment will be a lot cheaper as well, right? So I think we are not being strategic. There has to be a real strategy here in terms of where our gold medals are going to come from.
Right.
From an economic point of view, I think the fact is that with all that's going on, sports is not a priority, right? So if it's not a priority, then you just have to be a lot more efficient with how you spend, right?
Right.
Final point is that all these corporations who, don't pay for the end, only at the end that you come in,
Right.
You bear the burden together, right? Pay for the actual journey rather than just the destination.
Right. Okay, I'll wrap it up by playing angel's advocate, right? So I think the reason why it's not being done might also be because there's a huge luck element involved. So I'm not sure if you knew this, but I think it was a 200-meter run, the sprint. The first guy was 9.3 something seconds. The last guy was 9.7 something seconds. Something like that. Everyone was under 10.
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of luck. Like, it seems like it's not really a controllable factor.
Luck? You're just probably
when you say luck, you
0.4
mean
seconds better than the other person.
Yeah, but the thing is that 0.4 is a very within margin of error kind of thing, right? If everybody is below 10 and the first guy is above 9, right?
Right.
Like, there's really very little room for... There's a huge chance for butterfly effects already. You know what I mean? And the second thing is, as legitimate as all our concerns have been, they also seem to be things that government probably has already thought about. So then I think the second level thinking would be asking why, despite that, they never did. There might be actually good reasons. I'm not here to justify anything. What I'm saying, right? You put me in their shoes, I may not do any better. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And with that, this is the episode on Olympics economics, you can say that. But I think more than anything for us as a podcast, we just want to show that practically anything under the sun, you can actually sort of look at it from an economic lens as well.
Yes.
Right? It gives it a fresh take. Hopefully, the outcome is just that we have better economic policy, economic thinking, on top of everything else that will ultimately lead us to the elusive gold medal at the Olympics.
Right. So if you're enjoying this kind of content, please remember to like and subscribe to this channel. We'll see you in the next episode.